The forest of Zarnes was silent as the twin moons passed over its thick canopy. No birds, no wind, just stillness. Something ancient moved through the trees, hunting with steps so quiet, not even leaves stirred. Her name was Zara, the green-skinned, warrior of the Crimson Claw, a clan bred for war and silence. Her purple hair flowed behind her like a whisper of poison. She was on a mission to kill a man they called the Human Flame. He had no name in their records, only a trail of destruction. 10 scouting parties gone, 2 outposts burned. There, war machines turned to scrap. Each time, it was him. A lone human in strange armor, fighting with nothing but primitive weapons and cunning traps. Zara's rage grew each day she studied his path. Her sister had been part of the last scouting party. They never returned. She crouched low as her sensors caught faint body heat ahead. Her eyes narrowed. He was close. Her heart pounded, not in fear, but hunger. The kind of hunger that only blood could silence. She moved with the grace of a shadow, her dual blades humming with quiet energy. This was not a capture mission. This was a kill. The man stood in a small clearing ahead, shirtless, his skin scarred from battle. He held a long blade of human metal, blackened from fire. He wasn't running. He waited, like he knew she would come. Like he wanted it. Zara stepped into view. Her glowing eyes locked with his. No words, only silence and breath. She lunged. First, her speed broke the sound of the forest. Her blades moved like lightning, but he didn't flinch. He blocked with one hand and countered with brutal force. Their clash was not elegant. It was raw. He fought without hesitation. No hesitation meant no fear. She spun, flipped, kicked, struck. But he met every attack with the instincts of a beast cornered too long. He wasn't trained like her, but something about him was untamed and dangerous. A moment came when their weapons locked, eyes inches apart. Her breath trembled. Not from exhaustion, from confusion. His eyes didn't burn with hatred. They burned with understanding, like he'd been hunted before. Like he had hunted too. She broke away, leaping back. Heart racing, her shoulder bled. He didn't press the attack. He stood, panting, blade lowered. That was when she felt it. The rage that had led her here had melted, twisted into something else. Curiosity. Respect. He tilted his head slightly, almost like asking if she would continue. She could end this. One mistake, one charge, one final blow. But her hands didn't move. Her mind screamed to finish the mission, but her body no longer listened. Above them, the twin moons touched, casting silver light across their sweat-covered skin. Zara's heart was still thundering, but not with the same rhythm as before. She was seeing him now, not just as a target, but as a warrior, and she stayed in that clearing longer than she ever meant to. Zara followed him through the forest with silent steps and watchful eyes. He never looked back, never spoke, but he knew she was there. She could feel it in the way his shoulders stayed tense, and how his hand never left the hilt of his blade. Yet he let her follow without a fight. They moved through thick leaves and over mossy rocks, deeper into the wilds where no patrols dared go. This part of the planet was not mapped, not scanned, not touched by war. The trees stood taller here, ancient and alive. It was a place for hunters and ghosts. He led her to a cave hidden behind a waterfall. The sound of rushing water masked their presence. Inside, the space was simple bare rock, a small fire pit, and a few supplies scattered in the corners. Zara entered slowly, eyes scanning for traps. There were none. He sat near the fire and tossed a chunk of meat onto the flames. The scent was rich and strange, not like anything from her world. She stood near the wall, blade still drawn, but something inside her had changed. She didn't want to kill him now. She wanted to know why he fought like that. He handed her a metal plate with cooked meat. She didn't take it. He didn't insist. He just ate his own in silence. The fire crackled and the forest outside sang with distant night sounds. Time passed like slow smoke between them. Tense, quiet, but not hostile. Finally she spoke. "Why didn't you kill me?" He didn't answer right away. He looked at her with tired eyes. Eyes of someone who had seen too much death. When he finally spoke, his voice was deep and calm. "Because you weren't trying to kill me anymore." Her hands tightened on her blades. She didn't argue, because it was true. She had stopped trying. Somewhere during that fight, something inside her had shifted. She had watched him fight like a storm, raw and untamed, yet he showed restraint. He could have gone for her throat. But he didn't. He pointed to the scars across his chest. "They sent monsters before you, machines, bombs, assassins. You're the first who came alone." Zara blinked. That wasn't in her orders. She thought she was the first sent. Now she knew the truth. The War Council had lied. They wanted me dead. "Fine. I've done damage," he said with a half smile. "But they never asked why I did it. Why I stayed on this world." Zara finally took the meat and sat. Her blades rested beside her. She didn't trust him fully, but she wanted answers. He told her of the village that once stood beyond the forest. A place where he lived after crashing on this planet. He spoke of the people who helped him survive. Farmers, children, elders. None of them were soldiers. And none of them lived now. A strike team wiped them out. No warning, no reason, just orders. That's when he became the human flame. That's when he started fighting back. Not for revenge, but for memory. To remind the council that life still mattered. That every kill had a name. Zara listened in silence. She had never been told this part of the war. To her, he was a dangerous rogue. A target, but now he was something else. A man trying to survive. A warrior fighting for the dead. She felt her grip on loyalty begin to slip. He leaned back against the wall and closed his eyes. "You don't have to stay," he said. "But if you do, I won't stop you." Zara didn't move. Her body wanted to leave, to report, to return to command. But her heart stayed frozen at the mouth of the cave. She looked at her blades. They no longer felt like weapons. They felt like chains. For the first time, she wondered if she had been fighting the wrong war all along. Not against him, but against herself. And so she stayed by the fire as the warrior slept and the forest watched. In silence. Zara awoke before sunrise, the fire now cold and the human already gone from the cave. She rose quickly, blades at her side, her body tense but not afraid. She felt the pull to follow him, not because of orders, but because she wanted to know what he would do next. She tracked him with ease. His prints were wide and deep in the soft earth, heavy from thought rather than weight. He wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He walked through the forest like it belonged to him, as if he had walked these paths 1,000 times. When she found him, he was kneeling at a small stone mound covered in simple flowers. Her breath caught in her chest. She stayed hidden in the trees, watching. He said nothing. Just placed a smooth stone on the pile, then sat beside it with his head bowed. Zara didn't need to ask what it was. She had seen such markers before. Graves. His village had been erased, yet he returned to honor them. Even in war, he remembered the dead. That made him more dangerous than any machine. Because he fought with memory, he stood slowly and turned. His eyes toward the trees. "You don't have to hide," he said. She stepped out, silent, meeting his gaze. There was no challenge this time. No fire in his fists. Just calm acceptance, like he expected her to be there. "You made this place," she said quietly. "Even after they destroyed it, you came back." He nodded. "I come every week. Even if they're gone, they matter." His voice was rough, but honest. There was no pride in it. Just pain and duty. Zara had never done this for her own fallen. Her clan taught only survival. No grief, no mourning, only purpose. But now, seeing him kneel for people he once called family, she wondered if they had lost more than lives in this war. Maybe they had lost their soul too. As they walked back to the cave together, he spoke of things not found in reports. He told her about the children who sang before bed, the elder who carved wooden animals, the healer who once bandaged his broken ribs. None of them carried weapons. She listened without interrupting. Her mind replayed every order she had followed, every mission she had accepted without question. There were no names in her reports, only targets. Yet here was a man who remembered every name like it was written in his blood. At the cave, he tossed her a water skin. "You're not my enemy," he said. "If you were, I'd be dead already." Zara caught it and drank slowly. She wanted to argue, to deny it, but the truth was clear. Her chance to kill him had passed. "Why did you fight so hard?" she asked. "You could have escaped, left the planet." He looked at the sky for a long time. "Because if I ran, they would do it again, to someone else. Somewhere else. I stayed because someone had to stand up." Zara's throat tightened. His words struck deeper than she expected. She had never known humans to be this strong in will. But he was not like the others. He didn't fight for glory. He fought because no one else would. She began to understand why her blades had hesitated, why her hands no longer shook with rage. She had seen honor in him, not loud or polished, just quiet and steady like a mountain that refused to fall. That night, the fire between them was not just for warmth. It was a symbol. Two warriors from different worlds sitting together, not as enemies, but as survivors. She did not ask what would happen tomorrow. For now, they both needed peace. And so, for the second night in a row, Zara stayed. Asterisk the next. Morning came with the sound of distant thunder, though the skies above the forest were still blue. Zara stood at the edge of the cave, her armor humming softly as it adjusted to the air. She had not spoken much after the second night, but something deep inside her had begun to change. The human was sharpening his blade with slow, careful strokes. Sparks danced from the edge with each motion. She watched him, noting how calm he was, how deliberate every action felt. He was not rushing for war, but preparing like someone who never truly rested. "I heard them last night," he said without turning. "Machines, drones, not from you, right?" Zara stiffened. No, she hadn't sent them. And that meant the council had deployed more hunters. They didn't trust her silence. They believed she had failed. She reached for her link, but hesitated. If she called in, they would trace her signal and launch a strike. If she stayed quiet, she would be marked as a traitor. Her hands trembled slightly. She wasn't afraid for herself. She was afraid for him. "They know I haven't reported in," she said finally. "They must think you killed me." He gave a dry smile and set the blade down. "Let them think that. Might buy us some time." Zara looked at him, truly looked, and saw no fear in his face. He wasn't hiding because he was weak. He was surviving because he refused to be erased. That kind of strength didn't need shouting. It lived in the quiet choices, the ones that meant standing still while others ran. Zara had never met someone like him before. They spent the day setting traps and covering the cave entrance. The human showed her simple yet clever tricks: false trails, pressure spikes, scent scatterers. She had trained in advanced warfare, yet his methods were raw and effective. He fought like a creature of instinct. She had always believed humans to be chaotic, undisciplined, reckless. But this man moved with purpose. Every step he took was placed with intention. Every tool he used came from experience, not manuals. His survival was not luck. It was skill. As the sun fell, they sat by the fire again. She asked about his homeworld, and he spoke softly of green valleys and oceans that stretched to the edge of sight. He told her of music played from stringed instruments and children who chased birds across meadows. Zara had never heard such stories. Her world was metal and smoke. Her people lived in towers and trained from childhood to conquer or die. They did not sing. They did not laugh. They obeyed. And now, sitting here beside an enemy, she wondered if they had truly lived at all. "What will you do if more come?" she asked. "Will you fight again?" He stirred the fire before answering. "If they leave me alone, I'll let them walk. But if they come to burn what's left of this place, I won't let it happen without a fight." That answer did not surprise her. What surprised her was how much she agreed with it. For the first time, she didn't feel like a soldier. She felt like a person. A being with her own mind, her own choice, her own path not written by command. Later that night, she stood outside the cave, watching the stars. The sky above this planet was wide and full of light. In all her years traveling between war zones, she had never taken a moment to simply look up and breathe. She didn't know when he had joined her, but his presence was quiet beside her. They said nothing. The silence was full of meaning. There was no battle between them now. Only the question of what came next. In that moment, she realized she was no longer here to hunt. She was here to decide. Zara awoke to a low hum in the air, the kind that met approaching machines. Her instincts sharpened instantly. She stepped outside the cave and scanned the forest. There was movement far off, hidden behind the fog that clung to the trees like breath. The human was already awake. He had his blade in hand and a pouch slung across his back. He didn't speak, but their eyes met. He nodded once. That was enough. They both knew what it meant. Someone was coming, and it wasn't friendly. She activated her scanner, but the signal was being jammed. That meant only one thing: high-tech assault units. Probably a stealth team sent from orbit. They weren't here to capture. They were here to erase all evidence, her included. "Are they from your people?" he asked. Zara didn't answer right away. She wasn't sure anymore. She had gone silent. Her loyalties had become blurred. She had stayed too long, learned too much, felt too much. And now her own side had labeled her a liability. "They might be," she said, "but I'm not going with them." The human gave a short grunt, half surprise, half approval. Then he turned and began dismantling their camp. Not in panic, but with steady, measured hands. They weren't running. They were preparing. They moved through the trees with skill, leaving behind false tracks and broken branches to lure their pursuers into traps. Zara handled the terrain with ease, but what impressed her was how the human moved like he belonged in the wild. Like this forest had raised him. By midday, they reached a cliff that overlooked the valley below. Smoke curled in the distance, dropships, black and silent. She counted 3. Enough to hold a small army. Her heart beat faster, not with fear, but with the realization that this was real. The final choice was now in front of her. "We can disappear," he said. "There are deeper forests, hidden places. I've lasted this long by knowing where." "Not to be," Zara shook her head. "They won't stop. Not until they see a body, yours or mine." The human didn't flinch. "Then let's give them something else." They returned to the site of the first grave. The ground there was soft, sacred. Together, they built a decoy, a burned suit of armor, scorched remains, and enough DNA residue to fool basic scans. Zara marked it with her blade, the symbol of her clan scratched in ash. "Are you sure they'll believe it?" he asked. "They want to believe it," she replied. "They'll come down, scan, take samples, and leave. The council doesn't like mess. They'll accept the story if it's clean and quiet." The human looked at the false grave, then at her. "What about you? What happens now?" Zara didn't have a clear answer. She had betrayed her mission, defied orders, and aligned with a man she once swore to kill. There was no path back for her anymore. "I don't know," she said, "but I'm not leaving you here alone." He didn't smile, but his eyes softened. In that silence, they made a decision together. Not as soldier and target, but as equals. Warriors without a flag. Survivors without a home. The sky darkened as the dropships landed far away. Scanning teams moved in silence, inspecting the decoy. Zara watched from the cliffs, her breath steady. When the lead unit gave a signal and the ships began to rise. Again, she finally exhaled. It had worked. They were now ghosts, forgotten by the council. Freed by a lie told in smoke and ash. The danger wasn't gone, but the path ahead was now theirs to walk. That night, no fire was lit. They ate in silence, watching the stars. The cold bit at their skin, but neither moved. They had crossed a line that could never be undone. But in that shared stillness, Zara felt more alive than she ever had in her years of war, and she didn't regret it. Asterisk days passed in silence as the forest healed around them. The sky returned to blue, and the birds began to sing again. But the air still held tension, like the planet remembered what had happened. Zara stayed close to the human, moving with him through shadow and light. They no longer spoke much. Words weren't needed. Their bond had grown through quiet moments, shared meals, and silent steps through the wild. They moved as a team, watching each other's back, knowing without saying who would cover which path. Zara had stopped thinking like a soldier. Her blades were no longer tools of death, but symbols of memory. She cleaned them with care but did not draw them. The urge to kill had faded, replaced by something she didn't yet understand. One morning, they reached the ruins of an old facility buried beneath thick vines. The human paused at the entrance, eyes narrowed. "This was theirs," he said. "A relay station. I thought it was gone." Zara stepped forward and placed her hand on the old steel. It vibrated under her touch. Still powered, still active. She looked at the blinking red panel half hidden in the moss. "It's still broadcasting," she whispered. The human's jaw tightened. "Then we're not free yet." Inside, the station smelled of metal and dust. Crates were overturned. Screens flickered with static. But the core system was online. Zara moved to the console and typed in her old access codes. Surprisingly, they still worked. The screen lit up with data, surveillance logs, heat signatures, command orders. She scrolled through them, her eyes scanning quickly. Then she froze. One file blinked in red. Target, Unit Zara, status, deviated, purge order initiated. Her hands turned cold. She backed away from the screen, breathing shallow. The council had not just accepted her silence. They had declared her rogue. And worse, they had marked her for removal, not just erased from service. Erased from existence. Human stepped beside her and saw the file. He didn't speak. He only placed a hand on her shoulder. That small gesture said everything. He knew what it meant. She was no longer a hunter. She was now the hunted. "We destroy the relay," she said. "If they can't track it, they'll lose our trail completely." He nodded and pulled out a small charge from his pack. "Place it by the power core. We'll be gone before it blows." She didn't hesitate. Together they planted the charge and left the station behind. When the explosion lit up the sky minutes later, they stood on a high ridge and watched the fire swallow the past. Zara didn't feel anger. She felt something close to peace. The council had chosen to forget her. Good. She would make her own story now. Not one of destruction, but of choice, of freedom, of forging a path that no command could control. That night, they camped near a river. The human cooked fish over a small flame, and Zara sat across from him, her armor resting beside her. She looked different now, softer, yet stronger. Her face no longer held the hard mask of duty. She smiled once, just slightly. He saw it, and for the first time, he smiled too. No words were exchanged. The quiet between them was full of meaning. Two warriors, once enemies, now bound by something deeper than orders. Later, as they lay beneath the stars, Zara whispered, "What if they come again? The human stared at the sky and replied, "Then we face them." Together, she closed her eyes and listened to the water, the wind, and the steady sound of his breathing beside her. In this quiet place, hunted and forgotten, she had found what her world had never given her, a reason to live. The days that followed were quieter, but never truly still. Zara and the human moved through deeper woods, following no path, building no trail. The forest welcomed them in its own way, thick branches forming roofs, roots offering places to rest. They lived like shadows now, always alert, always ready. But there was peace in the rhythm. They hunted, cooked, and watched the stars. Zara found herself thinking less about her past and more about each new sunrise. She asked questions about Earth. He answered them in pieces. Oceans that moved with tides. Trees that changed color in fall. Creatures with feathers and songs. She closed her eyes and tried to imagine it. Her world had never had seasons. Only control. He listened when she spoke about her people. The clans, the rituals. The cold training chambers where children learned to fight before they could walk. He never judged her. He just listened, and that made her speak more than she ever had before. One afternoon, they found a hill overlooking a distant canyon. From that height, they saw a flash of metal between the trees. A drone. Zara ducked behind the rocks, scanning its flight pattern. It wasn't one of hers. It was newer, sleeker, not from the council. "They're looking for something," she said. The human adjusted the lens on his scope and studied the movement. "They're not just scanning the ground, they're scanning the air. Looking for signals or a eye residue." Zara checked her suit. Even in rest mode, it still leaked a trace signal. They had masked it with terrain before, but the drone tech had evolved. Someone had sent advanced trackers. Someone not content to let them vanish. That night, they buried her suit, wrapped it in heat-resistant cloth, masked it with thermal clay, and dropped it into the river. It drifted away without a splash. Zara stood on the bank in her undersuit, cold but unshaken. "You just erased your past," he said. She nodded. "It wasn't mine anymore." He didn't say anything, but his hand brushed hers before they turned back toward camp. That simple touch meant more than any speech. They started moving more often after that, no longer staying in one place for more than a day. The forest became their ally. It sounds familiar, its dangers predictable. But the sense of being hunted returned, a silent weight behind every step. Zara no longer feared death. What she feared was being dragged back to a life where she had no voice, where her choices were not hers, where she would be punished not for betrayal, but for freedom. They camped one night beneath the roots of a fallen giant tree. Rain fell gently through the cracks above, but they were dry. She asked him, "Why didn't you ever try to leave this planet?" He looked at her and replied, "Because there's nowhere else I want to be." The answer surprised her. Not because it was bold, but because it felt right. In the ruins of war, on a forgotten world, with nothing but survival between them, he had found enough. She realized she had stopped waiting for orders. Her mind no longer calculated missions or escape routes. Instead, she watched his face when he built the fire. She listened to his stories. She followed the rhythm of a life without control, but peace never stayed for long. The next morning, they heard engines in the sky. Not high like before, close, dropships. Bigger than before, too large for drones. These were war-class ships. Someone had come with force. Zara narrowed her eyes. They don't want to erase us quietly this time. The human gripped his blade and checked his gear. Then they'll see what quiet people can do when forced to speak with steel. And this time, she wasn't running. The sky broke with the roar of engines as 3 black dropships descended through the clouds. They were heavy-class carriers, designed not for scouting, but for war. Trees bent beneath the pressure of their landing thrusters, and birds scattered in terror. Zara and the human watched from a ridge cloaked in vines. Their camp was already gone, their tracks buried, but it wouldn't matter. These enemies weren't here to find them. They were here to destroy whatever was left. She saw the insignias on the ships, none from her clan or council. These weren't trackers or command hunters. These were private soldiers, mercenaries with no flags, no rules, and no care for who stood in their way. That meant someone else had paid to see them gone. Someone powerful wants us erased. She sighed. The human didn't respond. He was studying the terrain, eyes calculating. He moved like the forest whispered to him. After a moment, he nodded toward the eastern slope. We control the high ground. We make our stand there. They moved quickly, silently, setting up traps from branches and wires, digging lines into the soil, and planning every strike. They had no army, just themselves. But they had fought alone before. And now they would. Fight together. Zara felt her blood rise as she planted the final spike. It wasn't fear. It was focus. She had hunted him once, thinking he was the enemy. Now side by side, he was her shield. And she was his sword. The mercenaries began their sweep just after dusk. Their scanners lit the forest with a pale green glow, but the land worked against them. Every step triggered a misdirection. Every signal echoed false trails. They were strong, but they were blind. The first strike came fast. A tripwire snapped and dropped a net of steel thorns. A soldier screamed. The others closed ranks. Then the human struck from the shadows, blade slicing clean. Vanishing before return fire could reach him, Zara moved like lightning, her form a blur between the trees. She struck with precision, her energy blades slicing armor like silk. No longer was she bound by rules. She fought with purpose, and her heart beat with something more than survival. They moved as one, silent, deadly, efficient. Every soldier that advanced fell. Every line they pushed turned to retreat. Panic spread among the invaders. They had expected rebels or deserters, not predators. Smoke curled into the air as the forest lit with fire from damaged gear. The mercenaries signaled retreat. One ship powered up. The second exploded in a flash of heat. Zara lowered her pulse launcher and whispered, "One more to go." The final push came at dawn. The last group tried to storm the ridge. Zara stood at the edge, blade raised, armor now worn again, but bearing no symbols. She met them head-on. Fury and grace combined. Beside her, the human charged without fear. His roar echoed through the trees, and the enemy faltered. Not because of his strength alone, but because of how he fought. With every strike, he protected her. And she did the same. When the last soldier fell and silence returned, the wind blew through scorched leaves and empty shell casings. The ships were gone, the mercenaries broken. And the ridge still stood. They sat on the rocks, breath heavy, blood dried on their skin. The sun broke through the canopy, golden and soft. Zara closed her eyes. For the first time, she felt the war was over. Not the galaxy's war, but her own. She looked at him, and he looked at her. No words were needed. They had survived. Together, not as killer and target, but as warriors who had chosen each other when no one else had. "What now?" she asked finally. The human leaned back and pointed to the horizon. "There are valleys beyond that ridge, clean water, open land, no patrols." She smiled and stood slowly, her bones aching but her spirit light. "Then that's where we begin," she said, and together, they walked forward, not as fugitives, not as ghosts, but as something new, as free people with their own story to write.